Hi, we're talking today about the design process, and specifically for this class, I want to talk about the process of what you need to do for me to turn in a design. This part is only about design, it's not about development at all. So we're not using any text editors or anything. You can use Photoshop or Illustrator or some other tool that you like. For this first module, you can just use pencil and paper too. If you want to draw it on paper um, for the sketch, then that would be fine. Later in the semester, I'll require that you do a mock-up, a full color, full design mock-up um, as the design. But at this point, you can just make a sketch, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Um, okay, so we have under content, we're still in module 1, and under content resources, I'm going to talk a little bit about week 2. This Lynda Efficient Web Design Workflow is a half-an-hour video that goes through a designer's steps uh, of workflow of designing, and that includes lots of talking to the client and that sort of thing. Now, in our case, we're going to get past a little bit of that, where we're not going to go back and forth to the client so much like that. But and in fact, there's no real client. You're using me as your client when we get to the end. And for right now, you're your own client, so you can decide what you want it to look like. And in design thinking, that is this link up here. There are 5 stages, which includes empathize, so get to know your users, define the real problem, come up with some ideas, make a prototype, or in our case, wireframe and mockup, and then a test to see if it works. You can also make a prototype that is, in fact, um, a developed prototype, but um, we're really just trying to talk about design here. And notice how all of these, I mean, it looks like they kind of go forward, but at any point you could actually turn around and go back to an earlier step as you're working along. So keep in mind that the designing process needs to be or can be a little bit fluid, that you might find once you're actually uh, putting it out on Sketch, even those ideas that you had, even if you came up with some great ideas, they just don't work in practice. Coming up with your prototype or getting to the test uh, point and deciding that some of your ideas don't work, and maybe you need to redefine your problem, or maybe you need to come up with some new ideas. Don't be afraid to try new ideas to make it look entirely different than any examples that you've seen before, or try to make it look even the same as a website that you have seen that you like. So keep that sort of thing in mind, that you can have ideas, you can have unique ideas, and you can get ideas from other people as well. Um, and then the wireframes and mockups, I want to show you what those are. There's a beginner's guide to wireframes, which will go through um, some different uh, honestly, I would just mostly look at the pictures here. I wouldn't worry too much about reading all of this, but it's certainly something that you can read. Um, Most of the time, you're going to have a header. You're going to have some body. Now, don't confuse the body of a design with the body of an HTML page, but a header, a body, and a footer. And somewhere in there, you're going to have, typically in the header, but somewhere you're going to have some navigation available. And oops, uh, then it goes on and talks about getting inspiration. And you can actually get a wireframe for any website if you want to. You certainly don't have to, but it's something you can do. But notice that a wireframe shows text just kind of in this blocked gray um, uh, look design. Pictures or images have a box with an X through them, and a video will have something showing that it's a video. Uh, Everything else is kind of blocked out, or headlines would be even darker. You don't have to do it exactly that way, but in some way you should distinguish at least a picture from text, what you would have there. Our process is roughly that we're sketching, making a wireframe. A visual will be a mock-up, and that's what I said we're going to do later, and then go to code. But there are lots of processes that exist out there that you can certainly do when you're following your own steps. For this module, we'll just get to the sketch wireframe stage, unless you're already comfortable and you already want to use something like Illustrator or Photoshop, or even PowerPoint or Paint or something. If you wanted to use any of those tools, you're welcome to go ahead and make a high definition mock-up. It's just not necessary just yet. But you will need to make a sketch or a wireframe, and then we'll get to the point of doing the coding for it as well. And this goes through a variety of steps, picking your tools. And yeah, InDesign is one of the others that I think we have in D208 that you can use at any point. At any point that there's not another class going in it there, I should say. And I wanted to jump down to step 5 to determine the layout with boxes. So you might have multiple ideas for this, and in fact you should try to come up with multiple ideas. One maybe where the logo is on the top left and then the navigation kind of follows it on the right, or one where the navigation is all along the top and then the logo is down very slightly and on the left. That's typically where we're going to find the logo, on the top left, and the navigation somewhere along the top, either the full top or part of the top. It looks like this is an example that has a logo. It has perhaps some sort of image or tag of some sort there. And then the main navigation is down here. And this one's going to have a search bar. So there are a lot of ways that you can define this, or you can decide your layout. And all of these are a little different and a little more complicated than what we're doing for our first module project. Our first module project is just to tell me about yourself and use at least 10 different HTML elements. So it's a made up sort of assignment. It's not one that you would typically be given as a client, or a client wouldn't give you, wouldn't tell you how many HTML elements to try, or to use all of these different types of elements. So it's something that isn't exactly a real situation, but it's something I need to be able to see that you can use each of the elements. And then define information hierarchy with typography. So typically we'll put in a few, into a wireframe, we'll put in a few words so that we see what is going where, and also you see the hierarchy, the what is biggest and boldest. And then going down to even what you might have in bold, what you might have not in bold, but these, for example, are in all caps. So you're indicating in typography. You can also use different fonts, not just font sizes and bolding and stuff. Just a little hint, usually we're not using underlines or underscores for um, any design element anymore. Underscores have come to mean that it's a link, and typically it's a link inside a paragraph or something. So even like this home probably wouldn't be underlined as a design feature. And then, so there's one example of a design for this same client that is. So notice that the text, just moving the text to a slightly different position has made a pretty significant difference to the look of the design. So keep that sort of thing in mind. And then you can grayscale it. You can go on and do something high definition, but you're not required to do that for this particular unit. But in the future, you will. You'll go from this wireframe or this sketch, this black and white sketch, to a page that should look like what the actual page would be displayed on the website. So the client will see exactly what you have in mind to give to them, with real text and real pictures and real content. I gave you some links to wireframes and one to mockups so that you have some idea what wireframes are and what mockups are. A wireframe, let's see. So I just did a wireframe examples image search there and a mockup examples image search. So when I'm talking about wireframes, I mean black and white and can even be drawn by hand. If you draw them by hand, make them big enough and make them neat enough that I can actually understand what you're trying to do, though. Um, and mock-up examples would be full color and full design made in some sort of a graphic editing tool. Let me know if you have any questions about wireframes and mock-ups and what we're doing this unit um, in the, well, I'll get to that in a little bit. So basically we're talking sketches or wireframes. And let me know if you have questions.